you moments ago, the people who are living on planet Earth today are continuing to eat from the tree of good and evil, just as it was 5,960 years ago. This has been a continuing. So the people then and today continue to eat from the words and the philosophies of the grafted tree of good and evil, which is wicked. The grafted tree of good and evil is sinful. And every person that has eaten and who eats from this tree of good and evil is sinful. Now, the thing that we must understand about this message during Feast of Weeks concerning the trees and eating and the words is that the scriptures teach that all men are born under sin. And I used to wonder about that. And I used to wonder, well, how in the world can a newborn baby who has never talked or walked or was able to do anything but nurse at his mother's breast, how could he possibly be born breaking the laws of statutes, judgments, and commandments of Judeo-Warfare? Well, after these revelations concerning our holy feast and this knowledge relative to the tree of good and evil, we can see clearly that any words that the mother speaks is from the tree of good and evil. Why do we know that? Because the tree of life, which is the tree of nothing but perfection and good, was hidden from us. And of course, I will give some proof of that shortly. But the point is, it is impossible for a mother to nurse her newborn baby on words from the tree of life. It's not available. It has been unavailable for almost 6,000 years now. Totally unavailable for 5,996 years, equivalent to 6,000 years. Totally unavailable. So, therefore, the child, no matter who's born into this world, is born absorbing all around him the words from the tree of good and evil, this grafted tree. So we know for a fact by observing children, babies, that they learn to master the meaning of words long before they're able to speak. Long before. And before they choose to speak. And one day they just shock you with what comes out of their mouths, and you wonder, how did this miracle take place? It's been an ever ongoing miracle of acquisition of words that they hear you speak. And you as parents are a part of Revelation 12:9, that deceived world that has been eating from the tree of good and evil ever since Lucifer and Cain and their angels took over heaven from the possession of Adam. From that moment, the only tree available, the only words and philosophies and institutions available to you have been those from the grafted tree of good and evil. And those of our people who are good by nature, that Judeo-Warfare is calling out to, that some of them are so terribly deceived by false religion and the philosophies and traditions of men, that though they hear the absolute truth, they still choose, if we would like to say out of ignorance or even willfully, they choose to remain willfully ignorant and stick with what they're familiar with, and they choose religion, which is ruled over by the God of this world. And they are unable to look at what's in their right hand and ask the question, is this a lie that I have in my right hand? Is this a lie that I believe in? No, we learned that from the beginning of the instituting of this philosophy among Adam and his family, that it was designed to twist them and designed to cause them to trust Satan, to trust Lucifer and his descendants. And that's the nature of that which is wicked. So this tree has the appearance of good, as we discovered, but at the same time, it is not necessarily good. And this is what we're about to see. Whatever is tainted, no matter how beautiful it may look, if that is a glass of water, it looks ever so clear. But if it's tainted by harmful bacteria, though it looks good and though it tastes good, you're going to be ill from that. And that's the same for any fruit or any food or anything that you would ingest into your system. It may look perfect. In fact, no one would deliberately, with good sense, eat a piece of tainted meat or food or drink knowingly. It's because those foods appear to be good that one goes ahead and eats them. Then he may suffer salmonella poisoning, food poisoning, and some people are immediately die from such. Well, it's the same with this grafted tree of good and evil. The tree of good and evil is iniquitous. Therefore, every single person on this planet is iniquitous because they have been eating from the tree of good and evil. Judgment Day is all about the Son of Yud-Heh-Wav-Heh coming to the earth with the knowledge of the tree of life, which is eternal life, and thereby giving you the first choice in 6,000 years to choose righteousness and purity and perfection from the God of perfection. The gods of this world have offered you religion. All of it is false, and it comes from the tree of good and evil, and that's a fact. And now you've been given these facts, and you have no excuse, and you must go and study yourself, study on your own, to come up with the knowledge as to whether you want to accept the pure truth, and study for yourself and learn that this is the pure truth, or go with the tree of good and evil as you have been doing for the last 5,996 years, and you see the results. The tree of good and evil is fascinorous, F-A-C-I-N-O-R-O-U-S. Therefore, all the people of the earth are fascinorous. And the tree of good and evil is sclelerous, S-C-E-L-E-R-O-U-S. So all the people of the earth are sclelerous. The people of the earth are nefarious because the tree of good and evil is nefarious. The tree of good and evil is villainous. So, all the people of the earth, since they have been eating from the tree of good and evil, they too are villainous. That's why wherever you look in the earth, you see it's full of villains. The tree of good and evil is flagitious. Therefore, you are flagitious. The people of the earth are flagitious. Because that's all you've been eating from. These are the words and philosophies from the grafted tree of good and evil. The tree of good and evil is heinous. Therefore, all the people of the earth are heinous. Because they have been eating from the heinous tree of good and evil. The tree of good and evil is infamous. So, you are infamous. Because you are born eating from the tree of good and evil, fed to you by your parents, by your surroundings, by your education, by your churches, by your religion, and your economic system, whatever you turn to, wherever you turn, it's all around you. The tree of good and evil is sinister. Therefore, the people of earth are sinister. And we see it all around us. Some may appear less sinister than others, but it doesn't take away from the reality that all who eat from the tree of good and evil are sinister. You can't be other than that. It's impossible to be other than what you eat. The tree of good and evil is errant. Therefore, you are errant, and the people of the earth are errant. The tree of good and evil is ignoble. Therefore, the people of earth are ignoble. The tree of good and evil is bad. Therefore, the people of earth are bad. And you're a witness on your national and international television. Bad things are going on among all governments on earth. Bad things are taking place among all societies on earth. Even when you have people whose nature is predisposed toward righteousness, trying to rear their children, their boys and their girls, to be good, they still do bad things, turn out bad, seek to follow the path, which is bad. And there's nothing you can do with them to turn them to good, because frankly they don't know good. They don't know anything about good, and when they hear good, it's strange to them because they have been reared on everything that is bad. The tree of good and evil is base. The people of earth are therefore base because that's all they have been eating from, the tree of good and evil, the words of the tree of good and evil. This is advertised in all of your medium. You think of the medium, whether it's television, radio, newspapers, magazines, books, whatever, songs. It's all base. The tree of good and evil is vile. Therefore, the people of earth are vile. It's the only tree they've had access to is vileness. So we're looking at a prophecy that is guaranteed to be fulfilled in Matthew chapter 24, that it would be the same today as it was in the days of Noah. Why? How did Yahweh have guaranteed absolute proof that this was going to be the case? The days of Noah followed the garden. It was after the tree of good and evil had been the thing. It was after Eve and Adam had been kicked out of the garden, and no one had any more access to the tree of life, eternity. So if that's all you're going to eat from, then at whatever point in the future, you're going to be as it was in the days of Noah, wherein the people thought evil continually, 24/7. The tree of good and evil is foul. Therefore, the people of earth are foul. They not only smell foul, but the language that comes out of their mouth is foul. Foul-mouthed people of the earth. The tree of good and evil is low. Low. And the people of earth are low. Because they eat the words from the tree of good and evil. The tree of good and evil is mean. Therefore, you see people are mean one to another in their own families. You wonder sometimes, you've done everything you can to teach your children to be good, and yet, born from the same womb, they're mean to each other. The same womb, they're mean to each other. See? So, you might say, well, what happened between Cain and Abel? They were from the same family. Well, they had two different fathers, and secondly, their parents had already broken the commandments of Yahweh and were expelled from the knowledge of the tree of life. So Cain slew Abel. Mean. And it's been that way from the beginning of this civilization. It's based on meanness. The tree of good and evil is odious. So all who eat from the tree of good and evil are odious. And since all the earth has been eating from nothing but the tree of good and evil, and the whole earth is odious. But the tree of good and evil is obnoxious. So the people of earth are obnoxious. You are obnoxious. The only way that you can gain power over being obnoxious is to eat from the tree of life, is to eat from the tree that brings eternity. And the words that come from the tree of life you have heard from me, and now you know the difference. You're seeing the difference very clearly. The tree of life is abominable. Yahweh has said throughout these 6,000 years and raised up prophets to teach us that which is abominable in the sight of Yahweh. And what has Israel and all the people of the earth done? Even though Yahweh chose Israel out from among the people of the earth, yet Israel over and over and over again sinned, broke the laws of Yahweh, enjoyed the abominable things. Why? Because quite frankly, though they are chosen, though they are particularly identified as the flesh and bone blood descendants of Yahweh himself, as Adam was, they are rebellious children and continue to take up the abomination that they are taught that Yahweh hates. Even though the prophets come and tell them what's right, they still didn't teach them from the tree of life. They weren't given that by Yahweh. So as a result, they could not teach it. But they called to their attention the laws of Yahweh. And the people would keep them for a short time and then suddenly find themselves going for the abominable as practiced by all the nations around them. You see? And even your children today, they become abominable. And they become an abomination to Almighty God, the Creator, Yahweh. Though you take them to church all through the week and every Sunday, and you try to live and teach a good life about what you believe is God in the home, you find your children going completely away from you and doing everything of the world that you have never taught them to do. It's because everything around them is from the tree of good and evil. And they're not given that which would protect them from the tree of good and evil, because the tree of life has been hidden from them. The tree of good and evil is execrable, and therefore you are execrable. And the earth is execrable. The tree of good and evil is horrible. So the people of earth are horrible. Act horribly. Do horrible things to themselves, to each other. The tree of good and evil is horrid. You are horrid. The people of earth is horrid. Your family is horrid. Your children are horrid. Because there's been nothing but the tree of good and evil, the words and philosophies from the tree of good and evil available to you. The tree of good and evil is atrocious. You are atrocious. The people of earth are atrocious. The whole world has been deceived and have become atrocious because you've eaten from the tree of good and evil. The tree of good and evil is grievous. It's grievous. Grievous. All over the earth, grief. Everybody's grieving. And the scriptures teach that when the Son of Man comes, when the Son of Yahweh comes, the whole earth would be mourning. Now you can understand what that means. That they would be mourning. It's known that they would be mourning because eating from the tree of life makes life, eating from the tree of good and evil makes life grievous. The tree of good and evil is ghastly. So people are committing ghastly crimes. The people of earth are ghastly. The tree of good and evil is grim. They've even had movies about the Grim Reaper, where they glorify the grim acts of murderers, killers, and people of ill repute. The tree of good and evil is dark. And it was prophesied that at the coming of the Son of Man, it will be dark days. No wonder that the days of man are full of darkness and gross darkness, because the tree of good and evil produces gross darkness. And all who eat from the tree of good and evil have no choice but to be walking in darkness. And then the scriptures teach you that the people who sat in darkness have seen a great light. Well, the great light is from the tree of life. And you are now seeing that great light. And you have a choice to choose it. Or continue with the destruction that's all around you, that you're a part of, that you suffer from, and that you complain about on a daily basis. You complain all the day long. The tree of good and evil is dreadful. And this is that great and dreadful day of the Lord, Yahweh, because the whole people of the earth are dreadful, eating the words and philosophies of the tree of good and evil. When you read any magazine of this earth, even when you think it's of fine economics or some political treatise or some scientific or educational treatise, it's all full of the words of the tree of good and evil. They are all full of the philosophies of the writer, who's connoisseur of the tree of good and evil. The tree of good and evil is hideous. So the people of earth are hideous. And they're committing hideous crimes. You have people who are drugging others and other men and invite them into homosexual encounters, and then they kill them and cut them up and eat them. And every kind of hideous crime. These things are the news every day now. Nobody is safe. The children are not safe. The tree of good and evil is a result of this. It produces grisly people because it is grisly. The tree of good and evil is gruesome. And therefore the people of earth are gruesome because they're eating the words of the tree of good and evil. So they're committing gruesome acts. The tree of good and evil is unspeakable. And all who eat from the tree of good and evil, they do unspeakable things. Things that no one in decent society would dare talk about. Unspeakable. The tree of good and evil is damnable. And the people of earth are damnable. They do damnable things. You are a witness. The tree of good and evil is damnatory. All who eat the words and the philosophies of the tree of good and evil do damnatory things. The tree of good and evil is accursed. So the people of earth are accursed because they eat from the tree of good and evil. All who eat from the tree of good and evil are cursed. All who eat the words of the tree of good and evil are cursed. All who eat from the philosophies of the tree of good and evil are cursed because the tree itself is cursed. The tree of good and evil is maleficent. Maleficent. So all the people of the earth are maleficent. And the people of earth are malefic because the tree of good and evil is malefic. The tree of good and evil is malevolence. That's why the people of earth were given a prophecy 1900 years ago charging the Son of Man with being malevolent, and said they would never have brought charges up on him if he were not malevolent. And if you knew all of the understandings of malevolence, such as criminal, a rapist, child abuser, despicable, heinous, diabolical, wicked character. I mean, malevolence carries scores of synonyms. And the Son of Almighty God is charged with being malevolent. How can he be charged any other way when this is the only kind of mindset that the people in charge of the so-called court system believe in criminal justice? That's the kind of system they have. They have a system that gives what they call justice to criminals. But for the innocent people, they are charged unjustly in terms of their innocence. The tree of good and evil is evil-minded, produces evil-minded people, because in eating those words and those philosophies, you become what you eat. It is very easy to listen to evil-minded people tell you, boy, you ought to go to see that movie. That movie is good. It's a desecration of the word good. It can only be coming from the tree of good and evil, because when you listen to the people of this earth, it talk you into going to see a good movie. It's full of murder, full of chaos, full of blood and gore, full of people taking advantage one of another, rape and adultery and fornication and revelry and debauchery. I mean, it's unbelievable at what people call a good movie or a good book. When they say good, they're speaking of satisfying the senses of good and evil. Good, not in the term that is pure and perfect and righteous and uplifting and beneficial and will bring peace to the earth. No, here's a book written from the mind of a diabolical fiend who thrives on the tree of good and evil. That's real. Those are the ones in charge of giving you your images in the movies and the books, are the people who are under the curse of the tree of good and evil. And you feed on it. Some of you don't go see such movies, or some of you won't read those books, and you think you are escaping, but all of those around you are exhibiting demonic attitudes, talking one against the other, and gossiping, and meddling in other people's affairs, and lying on others, and unable to bring about peace in their congregations and in their families, because everybody around is you from the grafted tree of good and evil. The tree of good and evil is diabolic. So the people of earth are diabolic. The tree of good and evil is devilish. So what do you have? A society full of devils. Lucifer has deceived the whole planet Earth into being devils, and they don't know it. You have people who are talking against the devil, who themselves are devilish. And you have many who have stood before you as preachers and ministers who have demonstrated before the world that they are devilish. And all the time, they're talking about God. So you have to ask the question, which God do they represent? Because the Bible teaches us there are gods many and lords many. So since there are many gods and many lords, then you have to know, well, which God is the right one? Because only one is right. All the different gods, the many gods, are not the one. And Zechariah tells you in the last day, at the coming of the Son of Man, his name would be one. So all these different names you have, those are going to be destroyed. Because there's only one name for the Creator. His name is Yahweh. Why? Because he said so. He named himself. He declared his name. Man can't name the Creator. The Creator named himself. And he named himself Yahweh. So you're going to have to call him by his name. That's just the way it is. And his name shall be one, according to Zechariah chapter 14. The world is devilish for this reason. Been deceived by the devil. What do you think that means? If you've been deceived, the whole world has been deceived by the devil, then what kind of thoughts do you think you are devilish thoughts? And you don't know it. He's so deceptive that he lets you think the education you receive is good, and somehow you can think and you can make choices and decisions. You're making all your choices and decisions from within the circle of the knowledge of the tree of good and evil. You have no access to anything outside of that circle of knowledge. Therefore, the tree of good and evil is fiendish. The people of earth are fiendish. The tree of good and evil is satanic. So the people of earth are satanic. They talk against Satan all the time. They're satanic. They try to have a good home, and all the time their home is satanic. And there are people standing in the pulpit telling you about Satan, and all the time they're Satan's best friends, because they too are eating only from the tree of good and evil. And they have had no knowledge of this message until the coming of the Son of Yahweh, to know what the tree of good and evil is, to be able to identify the tree of good and evil. From this moment, you'll be able to identify the tree of good and evil. From this moment, you're able to identify the tree of life, because I'm giving you the elements, the attributes of the two trees. You can then see for yourself why Yahweh said, if you eat from the tree of good and evil, you will die. If you touch these philosophies and these words from the tree of good and evil, you will die. Now you can begin to see why. Because the tree of good and evil is hellish.